Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Isn't it ironical that the people whom we are closest to cause us the most sorrows, cause us the most challenges in life? And the people whom we are closest to are the ones who annoy us most. And the people whom we are closest to are the ones we get upset with most. And this is like a total contradiction in terms. Why is it? The logic obviously would be that people whom we are closest to would be the ones that we are able to share our time most with, share our patience with, etc., etc. So that's the irony of the situation. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. When you think about it logically, they're the people we would have greatest tolerance for, because we have the greatest expression of love for. So could someone please tell me why the world in fact operates opposite to that obvious logic? So if we care more, surely we should be therefore more loving, more understanding, more tolerant, more patient. Caring would support the thesis that we should be able to overcome that much more easily than if a stranger were to say something out of place or behave in a way which offended our sensibilities or something like that.
A stranger wouldn't criticize you.
A stranger wouldn't criticize you, but on the other hand, if someone close to you does criticize you, you have a greater level of tolerance for them because of the love.
Yeah. Invested.
I think you have a mask with strangers, whereas with your family you lay it all out there.
So what are we, hypocritical individuals that we just operate the exact opposite? The ones we love, maybe we don't really love as much. Maybe we love the stranger even more and more tolerant than the stranger. Is that the reality of the situation?
I think we have expectations.
We have expectations. Those of you who are with me on previous sessions will have heard the following statement. No one should ever have any expectations, because expectations flow from the ego. I expect you to. I, it's to do with the I, right? So if it does come as a consequence of expectations, surely that's not a good place. So what is it?
We're with them.
Sorry?
Maybe because we think they should know us so well, so they should understand us, and
we have higher expectations of them, going to the same point, but that doesn't seem to come from a good place.
I think we're invested.
We're invested.
We're connected, invested in their lives and with.
Good, getting there. So what?
So therefore we're more sensitive,
So we're more sensitive to what?
We react more in a more emotional way, and we are
Emotions flow more. I agree with that.
We come here to learn lessons.
Sorry.
We can't get away from them, so we have to learn the lessons.
Okay. So the answer is getting to where you're heading towards, namely, when people are very close, the slightest departure from the norm creates an exaggerated response mechanism. Because when things are very finely tuned, the slightest departure from that finely tuned mechanization machinery, be it emotional machinery, be it mental machinery, in our own mind, it becomes that much more than an objective third party, usually the counselor, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the friend, whoever it is that we consult with, etc., the rabbi, would advise us. So there is reason for the way that we respond. Now comes the more important question, does that make it right? Okay? So a lot of people don't come to that question. They may be able to get to the point of the explanation, yes, we're much closer, and therefore any departure from the norm causes us more agitation, but that means that we're failing. If we love a person more, genuinely, then we genuinely would compensate for those things that cause attention there. Easier said than done, and that's why we're all here together. Okay? So I'm going to offer in these 3 sessions 3 amongst many tools available to help sort this out so that we can actually operate in a much more even keel. Specifically here I'm talking about families. There may be other relational closeness relationships that we could be referring to, but here we're talking in terms of family as such. Okay, so we're talking today about the tool of strength. And when I say strength, I don't mean belligerence, I don't mean arm wrestling, I don't mean weightlifting. I'm here talking about mental and emotional strength. But any strength requires an antenna. It requires some sort of right or wrong barometer. Because you can be strong and exercise your strength very unwisely, and you can use your strength very, very wisely. So just to have strength alone is insufficient. So we have a famous teaching in terms of Pirkei Avot, which is one of the areas of Mishnah in Jewish traditional teachings. Mishnah is part of the Talmud. And this particular part of the Mishnah called Pirkei Avot, which is usually translated as the ethics of the fathers, but that's not right. It's really the wisdom teachings of our great ones. Says, Ezehu HaGibor, who is truly the strong individual? HaKovesh es Yitzro, the one who is able to capture his Yetzer. Very strange choice of words. Capture his Yetzer. Firstly, what does Yetzer mean? So Yetzer is a difficult word. Some of you might be familiar with the Yiddishism of Yetzer Hara, the sort of colloquial pronunciation of Yetzer Hara, which literally means, they translate as evil inclination. But the word Yetzer is very hard to translate. There's no easy translation. Yetzer comes from Yotzer, which means created, formed, at the initial stages of creation as such. So what we're talking here about, something which is almost genetically implanted, something which is part of our inner self, and we have 2 tendencies, Yetzer HaTov, the good inner self, the Yetzer Hara, and the less than good inner self. In other words, the human being is a duality. We aren't a uniform whole. We are a duality. And that's the way we've always been. And that is very important because duality means choice. And you've heard me say the following statement before, some of you. Choice goes to the meaning of life. If you didn't have choice to murder, to steal, to hurt, if you didn't have that choice, and on the other hand the choice to help, assist, confer, etc., life would be meaningless. If you couldn't murder someone, if you didn't have that capacity, then life would be meaningless. Sounds like a ridiculous statement. And yet, it goes to the core of being, because if you didn't have choice, who would we be? We would be robots, automatons, amoeba, just acting on cue, software programs, walking software programs. It's our very humanity of being able to fail as well as to succeed that gives us the meaning. When we actually exercise the choice wisely in that moment is a wonderful achievement. So when the Mishnah says, Ezehu HaGibor, who is the strong one, HaKovesh es Yitzro, I'm going to elongate the translation, the one who exercises choice so that their higher self operates rather than their lower self operates. Or to put it in Hasidic terminology, their Nefesh Elokis operates rather than the Nefesh Bahamis operates. And at all times, both in behavior, speech, and thought, you will have both tendencies operating. You can think well or think bad. You can speak well of someone, speak ill of someone. You can behave correctly or you can behave unwisely. So the Mishnah is telling us the strength we're talking about is the strength to choose the consciousness, the mindfulness of the positive disposition. What if a person is born with a genetic proclivity for being a nasty person? No such thing. No one is born with such a proclivity. No one. No one is necessarily born the other way either. We have certain emotional capacities, each one different in the room. Certain mental capacities, each one different in the room. But we can exercise our own emotional and mental capacity for the right or for the wrong, no matter what the quantum is. The genes might give us the quantum and the nature, but the choice remains free for each one of us. That's why Paro, when we say the heart of Paro was hardened, that was actually a very, very major punishment. He was removed the power of choice. That's what it really means. All life's meaning becomes lost. It wasn't that he suddenly found himself he couldn't choose the other way and therefore he was frustrated by it. It was that his meaning of life was totally deprived because he didn't have the power of choice at that time.
Was he aware of that?
I don't know. I'll have to send a letter to the editor and find out. Okay.
Because he's getting frustrated.
So, that's the Mishnah which introduces, we're talking about strength. And therefore, your exercise of strength, we call it strength of character, but we mean strength of mind, strength of heart, mental and emotional strength, is something which you can exercise. And I'm using the word exercise very advisedly, because initially it's difficult, especially change. Life promotes in us habit, what we call regilus. And when we habitually operate, automatically, unmindfully, as you have heard in other lectures, we lay down circuits of the brain which make it much more easier for us to repeat that habitual behavior. The more you do something, the more you think something, the more it's likely to be that in automatic mode. Okay? So, when we say about a person being in a certain way, can they change? Everyone can change no matter what. The first principle I'm telling you is exercising strength wisely in a family setting is not just the aspect of recognition, opening one's eyes and seeing, but practice, practice, practice. Because undoing habitual patterns within a home, and patterns in a home set in from the earliest stage, undoing those requires to reframe the flow of the neurotransmitters in the brain into a new pathway, and in order to do that, you have to practice a new pattern. So it's not going to be just going to someone and someone opens your eyes and then you say, oh, I now understand. That won't solve the problem. It's only when you practice strategic change in a family setting over and over again. And it takes a certain amount of time for a new habit to set in. Some say 4 weeks and some say 12 weeks, whatever it might be. But it's not 4 years and 12 years. All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
You may answer later. So if I make a change that I won't react and I won't be aggressive.
No, I didn't say not to react. I say react wisely, we're going to say.
Yeah, how do we know what wise is?
Well, we're going to come to that, as you said. Okay. That's got to do with value systems. Okay, so under what circumstances need you to exercise strength of mind and strength of emotion? So have a look at some of the points that I raised there. When you're feeling criticized or abandoned or constantly misunderstood, now all those things wear you down. The first time you react, the 10th time you react, by the 20th time you don't only not react, but you almost accept it. And you find yourself that it steals more energy than running a marathon. And that's why people grow very weary, physically, energetically, under such circumstances after a period of time, and give up in a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Great strength is needed to withstand partners' snickering, other people's envy, teenage tantrums. And the strength we're talking about is what's commonly referred to very, very colourfully in English as intestinal fortitude. Or, in Kabbalistic terms, Gevurah shebechesed. Let me explain. The dominant feature that makes us feel happy and fulfilled as human beings is called chesed. What's chesed? Chesed means our sense of contribution, giving, sharing. If you were to recall instances in your life when you felt most happy, most fulfilled, whether in childhood, adulthood, no doubt whatsoever that those instances will be ones where you were giving and sharing of yourself emotionally or tangibly to someone who was close to you. Because chesed, the flow from here outwards, is the dominant feature of the human being. Why? Because that happens to be the primary tool that Hashem used to create the world. So chesed is embedded in the world as such. The chesed yibana ha'olam, as the Tehillim says. That chesed was Hashem's tool. Therefore we're embedded with it. Therefore chesed, giving and sharing. But you can give and you can share and contribute unwisely. You can give in unwisely. People think that wisdom means giving in. No, it doesn't. We need strength. So we have to say that in that flow of chesed must be a level of strength called Gevurah. Gevurah means inner strength, withholding, contracting, focusing. These are abstract terms in the spiritual energy worlds. But when we concretize them in human behavior, because we all have these aptitudes, it means I love my child, but you know what? I have to provide the assertive no on this occasion, because although I love the child, chesed, I have to practice Gevurah in this moment of the no, even though it comes out of love, because that's what I consider wisest for the development of the child right now. That's the Gevurah component inside chesed. Okay, so I want you to start giving me some examples of problematic situations that you might find challenges within families or you've seen in families. You don't have to speak autobiographically, you can speak biographically about what you might have seen. What are some typical examples of difficult situations that result within and amongst people whom we are ostensibly close with, but it erupts and goes exactly the wrong way?
This morning.
This morning.
This morning, a beautiful person in my family was racing to catch a plane, was very, very stressed and narky, and I was doing my oil pulling, so I couldn't speak, and he said something, and I went, and he says, don't grunt at me, don't grunt at me, don't, like sort of, everything was his anger towards his stress.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how did you feel?
Well, I kind of knew that it was, I didn't like it,
Okay.
but I knew that he was stressed, and I'm the person he usually takes it
All
out
right,
on.
so that wasn't problematic then.
Oh, right.
Okay? Problematic
Used
is
to
when
be
we
problematic.
fail, not when we pass.
Last
Alright.
week was
You
problematic.
get 10 out of 10. You're going to pass by Carol, okay?
Last week was problematic.
I think often when your children get married, you have issues with in-laws because they're
You
not.
too?
Well, I don't, but I know it could be a potential
Yes.
problem, and often we say, especially about our daughters-in-law, we
Yes.
need to be beige.
Yes.
Just a bit. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm not-
sure. Absolutely.
It's a reality, and it's one has to remember they are not your children.
Right. What is it about, let's just throw that around a bit, bandy it around a bit. What is it about in-laws?
Are we talking about son-in-laws as well?
Any in-laws you like. Any in-laws. whether they're mechutanim or whether they are children-in-laws, whatever. What is it that creates that kind of tension? Let's be a little analytical.
Obviously, they come from a different value system.
Different
Yes,
value
yes.
systems, so maybe a clash of values, and therefore, so what?
Because you feel close, you feel you ought to be close because they married your son or your daughter.
Yes.
Therefore, you feel it's part of the family.
Yes.
Yet, as you say, they have different values, and therefore,
And
you don't know
therefore,
which to step.
and therefore what?
Well, you don't know how to react. You don't know how to.
Well, that may be the first, the third, the
They
10th
don't-
time. What about the 125th time?
They don't conform to the way, I suppose it's come back to value, but they don't conform to what you want them to, or what
That's usually
expectations.
exactly it. It's to do with I want and I'm not getting.
Yeah.
I want and I'm not getting. Even if you are perfectly confident that what I want is much more right than what they want, it's all about what I want. So one of the things we're going to, in the course of these sessions, is always focus on where's the ego? Where's the I? And what role is it playing? And is it justified? When is it correct and when is it incorrect? When should I be assertive? Isn't that ego? Or when should I be egocentric? And that's ego. Why is one right, one wrong? What's the difference between assertiveness and egocentricity? What's the difference between those two? And we always sort of use the word assertiveness in a positive sense, and egocentricity has this very negative PR. So what is it?
It's the I.
But the I is in both. To be assertive, isn't the I coming to the fore also?
In a positive way.
Yeah, now what makes it positive? This is the point, very good. What makes the assertive I positive
Because
and the
the person-
egocentric I not?
Because the person who is assertive is progressing in a continuous way, in a positive way.
What
Whereas
makes it
the person
positive is my
that's
point.
Not is I want more, I want this, I
No,
want
no,
that,
I
get
hear
through
you,
it.
but I want to discriminate. I want you to tell me what makes it the more right one.
It's a choice and it's a response, it's not a reaction.
Okay, it may be a very reasoned one, you're saying. But couldn't egocentricity come into a very reasoning process? I know I'm right, and I better get this thing right. And if I'll strategize how I can get it, that's still the I in a very subtle way. It's being very rational, very reasonable, but it's still I want.
It includes the other party as well.
We're getting close now.
Egocentricity more emotional, assertiveness more logical.
You could say that, but no, I'm going to say it's in both.
I've got a term gracefully assertive, which I really don't understand.
Gracefully assertive, it's giving with words, but somewhere there.
There's a bit of compassion with assertion.
Very good. The difference is, and I'll repeat, use the word compassion. Assertiveness is, I am exercising strength in my position because I value you, and what I want is for your benefit, not for mine. Right, or whether you're right or wrong. I'm not talking about right. I'm not saying whether you're right or wrong. But that's what distinguishes assertiveness from egocentric controlling behavior. Whereas controlling behavior or talk or thought is, I want because it's going to make me feel better. So the issue is whether I'm going to be for the benefit of the other, rightly or wrongly. I may be completely incorrect. Assertiveness sometimes is incorrect. But what distinguishes assertiveness from control is whether it's for your benefit or my benefit. Assertiveness is always for the other's benefit.
It's not really.
Actually, no, that's not what I meant, actually.
I know, but when you went to compassion, that's where I was
Yeah,
going.
because
Because
I was
compassion
thinking-
is always the other.
Well, I was thinking an inclusion of both.
Yeah, but I don't want to.
One or the other.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's got to be always the other. Not I think, I know. It's got to be the other.
Okay.
I don't agree. Assertiveness for the other person's benefit?
Yes.
Is it the assertiveness will be altruistic?
I mean, we can define it any way we want. We're talking about the English language. If you look up the Oxford Dictionary and the Cambridge Dictionary, they may even disagree on the word assertiveness. I'm telling you the way I'm using the word assertiveness. Right? And to me, it makes no sense to use assertiveness otherwise, because then there's no distinction. So assertiveness, the way I understand it, why it's considered positive, is because of chesed, because it's for your benefit. I am saying no to you because I know that it's wrong to me give you this toy at the moment, So that's assertiveness, as opposed to, no, you can't get it because you were cheeky to me and my ego has been deflated and I want to get back at you vengefully. Not that a parent would have that obvious, but there are elements of that. Very often when parents lose themselves, are angry with the children, they then in their own minds justify it as righteous indignation. I was right to get angry at my kid because look at my kid, how chutzpah he or she was, etc. No, that's completely incorrect. Completely incorrect. Just trying to justify ego at work, controlling behavior, satisfying yourself. I've got to get it out, I've got to vent, I've got to do it's me. When you speak with a child, for example, you have to be extra super careful that what you're doing and saying, even the tenor of your voice, the look on your face, is for the benefit and growth of the child. That requires a lot of work. That's when assertiveness becomes right.
Laibl, is it win-win when you're doing it for the other person? Is that considered
Yes.
win-win? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
Because you're taking of yourself
Yeah.
to the extent that you possess wisdom, your confidence, and you're contributing. You're not taking, hey, make me feel better, so I'll get angry, because anger allows me to vent. That's me. We confuse that. Even relationships we confuse, because later on we say, but I was right in saying that and doing that. You may have been right, but you did it all wrong because you did it for yourself and didn't do it for the other. The logic may have been there. That doesn't make it right. If you hurt the other one, if you estrange your child, if you cause disconnection, that doesn't make it right. Even if logically it was right. Okay? Have a look at some of the other situational examples I have here. A husband procrastinates with chores. Are you familiar with that one? Being held hostage by parental last will and testament. If you don't do as I say, you will be out of my will. You know, those things are there, out there. I hear about them. Teenage child seeking freedoms that frighten you, like driving a car early, experimenting with drugs and alcohol, keeping bad company. You get frightened. When you are frightened, you are most vulnerable emotionally. And that's when you exercise least strength in emotions. When you feel vulnerable, that's when you will tend not to be wise. And vulnerability requires wisdom, strategic thinking in order to be able to overcome that. A spouse who's stifling your self-realization. Single parenting can be a very difficult situation. Passive-aggressive behavior. You know passive-aggressive? In other words, when you show your anger by smouldering quietness, or aggressive spouse, even to the point of physical aggression. Not sure what I meant here by adult, child. Parenting a child with needs. These are all examples of situations where strength is required in different degrees of different kinds, different understandings, different wisdoms govern these things. So how do you develop strength? How do you actually train strength? Strength of character, strength of mind, strength of emotion. So the answer is, I feel, you have to practice it. Nothing happens without rehearsal and practice, rehearsal and practice. Again, I repeat, just knowing it does not do it. Knowing it will not solve the problem. You can be the wisest person in the world, not wisest, you can be the cleverest person in the world, understanding the dynamic and yet not help yourself, contain yourself. You can't control yourself because you haven't practiced. You can't learn piano without practicing the scales. You can't play the piano without learning the scales and repeating the scales over and over, boringly. And guess what? Then you can play Beethoven, then you can play Mozart, etc. So without that, it's not going to happen. Same here. We need to practice the scales. So I'm going to share with you some of the scales, or an approach to learning music. May not be the classical way of learning the music of strength. Maybe Suzuki or something else. We'll see how we come across here. Choose a symbol. This is one coping strategy which I'm suggesting to you. adopting a ritual. Choose a symbol, an image that represents to you strength. I give you examples there. A lion, a beautiful, majestic tree, a weightlifter. Can anyone offer any other symbols of strength? Again? I can't hear you.
I'll tell you later.
The Khamsa, to me, that's a
Khamsa might be for you, okay.
White light.
White light might be, is that strength? Okay. Fire. All right. You'll think about it. What is your symbol of strength? Anything which represents strength in a symbolic manner. Make a simple piece of jewellery.
I was going to say a member of a family that you're devoted to, that you can give you, that has given you in the past strength and courage.
Okay, it may be an individual. Make a simple piece of jewellery that sports that image.
Yes.
Okay? Or you can ask someone to make it for you. Go out, look for your lion, look for your tree. It may be a little baby weightlifter, whatever might be the case, etc. All right? Okay. Then wear it. Wear it. Touch it every hour, on the hour that should be, and say to yourself, I am strong enough to withstand this wisely and compassionately. That's one ritual, one way of handling the repetition of scales. This is a scale. Every hour, on the hour, during your waking times, touch it and say that. You'd say, well, what's that do? It does a lot. You're programming your brain. And we know, as I mentioned earlier, by seeing this on imagery, on scanning of brains, on screens, that when you repeat something over and over again, you are creating a flow between nerve end fibers that lays down a groove. Initially, it's a very faint groove. After doing it 100 times, it becomes a much more profound groove. That becomes your new default response to situations of potential conflict, potential dissension, whatever might be the case. That's one approach. And I advise you to go ahead and practice that one and do it. You'll see how well it works. It doesn't yet answer the question which you asked before, which is, okay, so now I know I have to be strong, but how do I exercise strength wisely? You haven't come to that. All right, another one. Wear a suit of armour. Grow a thick skin. How does that work? Make a commitment to inwardly reject a family member's criticism by accepting that everyone can have an opinion, but yours is the one that counts. Inwardly, not outwardly. Okay? So that's the commitment. Okay? If you feel that you are right and something is happening which causes either pain to you unjustly or pain to someone else unjustly, all right? That's the first thing, commitment. Then, when someone makes an unkind snide or critical remark about you, use your thick skin to deflect it. No need to be defensive. Deflecting, non-response. What's deflecting is? As the spear hits the armor, it bounces off. Don't give in to a family member's constant whining or importunities. Stand your ground with an assertive no, but said softly and with a poker face.
And in the Four Agreements it says take nothing personally, which is very difficult.
Yes, don't want to go that far, because I think that's like a generalization that doesn't have any sense unless you get to a stage of the 10th black belt. Here I'm talking about how to handle things in the immediate situation, okay? So, what do we mean here? Just let me repeat what's being said here. Here we're talking about actually visualizing yourself with a suit of armor. You practice a visualization. You see yourself in a suit of armor, and you're doing this because there is someone who always gets under your skin and causes the worst side of you to come out. If the best side of you comes out, you don't have to use this. We're talking about a situation where the worst side of you comes out. Usually, again, as we said at the outset, those closest to us, ironically, as such. So you take this visualization. and you practice it. I always say 3 times a day when it comes to visualization. And then I'll give you a time frame of how long you should practice it. 1 minute minimum and no more than 2 minutes. That's all it takes in terms of visualization practice. Okay? And what you do is you imagine the person saying the things to you which they tend to say to you. That person that gets under your skin. And you see that. And you see that as an arrow or as a spear being thrown at you. Their words. And watch it deflect off your armor. And then what happens in the real situation, eventually it will deflect off your armor. It won't get under your skin, which gives you the space to be wise in the moment. Because what happens is, very often we get hooked into the moment without the opportunity to be wise in the moment. And by recognizing that the spear is not penetrating, gives you the opportunity to be much wiser in your response mechanism. So now you've got a piece of jewelry, and now you've got an armor. You've already got 2 rituals or tools to utilize in terms of this. So I give you a way of practicing this visualization, which I just said, and I'm giving you a different one. Picture your skin growing thicker and tougher until it's like a rhinoceros hide. We're going to do this in a moment. Now picture a family member whose verbal barbs assail you.
What's assail?
Trying to get you. Visualize his or her hurtful words as arrows flying in your direction. Don't flinch. Feel them bouncing uselessly off your thick hide. Visualize that family member turning away in hopeless acceptance.
Nice.
Okay. You're free, it's your mind, you can do whatever you want in your mind. It doesn't have to yet conform to reality. It will eventually conform to reality. That's the point. Not to take a useless visualization, because it takes 2 to tango. To create change, only one of the 2 has to change to create an overall change. So you be the initiator. You be the change. Was it Mahatma Gandhi? Be the change you want to see in the world? Okay. You have to be the one who's going to exercise the change, because you're taking the initiative here. Alright, so let's practice it. Everyone.
Bible, all these 10 points about the silent rejection, you said inward rejection, it's a silent one, everything.
Which one is that?
It starts from where sort of our maker commitments to inwardly reject, and all these 10 points how to reject it. Is it silent? You never speak.
I'm talking about here about a visualization exercise in your own head at the moment.
It's all in the head.
At the moment, the practicing of scales is in your head. When you get onto Carnegie Hall stage, when it's really happening, then all that practice has to pay off. Okay? But right now we're talking about the practice.
It's all silent.
In your head.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll talk you through it, don't worry. Everyone, put everything out of your hands. Hands resting on knees and thighs. Feet symmetrically on the ground. Back fairly straight. Head well balanced on your shoulders. And gently close your eyes. And I want you to look at yourself in your mind's eye. See yourself. And I want you to feel your skin growing thicker and tougher. Your arms, your torso, your thighs, thick skin like a rhinoceros. Feel on your skin that external strength of non-penetration. Now bring to the mind's eye an individual who tends to rub you the wrong way. And try to recall the standard words which they often offer that always gets to you. And as they speak, see their words fly at you like arrows from their words of speech, and immediately feel your skin just rejecting the arrow. It bounces off. You're impenetrable. You'll have that strength. The arrows keep flying and just bouncing uselessly off in all directions. Their words cannot reach you. Their arrows cannot affect you. And now see them give up, turn away, and leave, recognizing they cannot get to you this way. Move your fingers and toes and gently open your eyes. Coming back. Now each of you can be your own art director. You can write your own screenplay of the mind. If this particular visualization is not the best one for you, make one up and repeat it 3 times a day, onwards and onwards, for between 4 weeks and 8 weeks. In the meantime, if that person should affect you and you fail in the moment, that's okay, because you haven't finished your scales, so it's not really yet your Carnegie Hall stage. But in 4 weeks it will be, okay? And it does work. And if it doesn't work 100%, it may work at 90%, but you'll get there. Because you create realities through the way that you train your brain and your heart.
Does it teach them not to repeat it?
Well, human nature is that it depends on their own sense of anger and their own resilience in that way. For most people, in over 80% of circumstances, people only get satisfaction when they know they can get at you. When they can't get at you, they feel it's a waste of time and stop. That's what happens with most people.
I always looked at it as a skipping rope, that there are 2 people making the rope go around. If one person lets go, there's nothing going on for the other person.
Yeah, you might. I'm not sure that'll provide strength, however.
Yeah.
May be useful as another problem solver mechanism, but I'm not sure it necessarily creates what I'm teaching here today, which is creating inner strength to be able to reject. Okay? Then there are other aspects of that you need to practice in order to support that. So, for example, the exercise for physical, vocal, and mental strength. Get better physical shape. Get into better physical shape to strengthen your self-image. Especially use weights as a psychological strengthening regime. Every time that you lift the weight, you create for yourself an image of strengthening yourself. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting stronger in myself. Whatever you do, that sometimes has an additive effect in conjunction with everything else that we're talking about. And just the self-image, because if a person has a poor self-image, even physically, then they tend to feel more vulnerable and weaker. So when you're able to maintain a strong self-physical image, it doesn't have to be a truly physically strong person. It's the image that has to be strong, that you're adequate for yourself. That makes a very big difference also. Gives you that self-esteem as well in passing, which allows you to be deflective in the way that aggression comes at you. Increase your vocal strength. Every day, roar like a lion. Admittedly, best done when not in company. But practice roaring. Hear the strength of your voice, because there's a biofeedback loop actually. When you roar, you're actually making yourself strong because you're starting to recognize your strength. Yes.
My 2-year-old's doing that a lot lately.
Your what is this?
My 2-year-old
Your
is doing
2-year-old.
that a lot lately.
I wonder what would happen
She
if
roars
what would happen if Mother roared at the same time.
No, we do. I do.
But I don't mean roar negatively. I mean funnily. Okay. No, but really, allowing your vocal cords to be stretched has an effect on you. You start to realize something about your inner strength. Try it. Sometimes I know there was, back in my older days, there was a thing called scream therapy. I don't know if you're primal scream. I don't think it's a great therapy, by the way, for the things that they use it for. But the use of stretching vocal cords for the purposes of recognizing your strength, I think that does work. That's another one. Increase your endurance by taking on tasks that are a little outside your comfort zone. Accomplish them. Another one. Stretch yourself. Recognize that your prowess, your capacity, is beyond what you might think it is. Rehearse interactions in your mind. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. I'm a big believer in rehearsals. In front of a mirror, rehearse. Keep rehearsing situations. And give yourself marks. I've got 7 out of 10 there. I've got 4 out of 10 there. Get it better and better. Clarify your personal life mission, goals, principles, and adopt them meaningfully in your life. Here comes an important one. It's only in one little sub-heading here. What we mean here is clarifying your life mission, your goals, is really identify your value system. Here we come to the question, what makes something right or what makes something wrong? When is strength right? When is strength wrong? What is right and wrong? So let me be quite bold and say, logic cannot get you to right and wrong. Logic is not going to help you to get to right or wrong. For every logical argument, someone else has another logical argument that can knock it down. I have yet to hear of one logical proposition, premise, that I don't have the capacity to knock down in some shape or form. Even the one that I often speak as an example, everyone here believes that murder is wrong, but no one can prove it. Can they? Would someone like to have a shot at it? Why indeed is murder wrong?
In the Torah it tells you.
That makes your belief in it.
It's not
But that's not a
yours.
logical argument.
It's not your life, it's someone else's life. You're not in.
Yeah, but life is meaningless, who cares?
Why?
That's my belief.
Why one spare his life and destroy
My belief.
someone?
I believe life is meaningless. And therefore if life is meaningless, if I take someone's life, it doesn't matter.
And the Torah doesn't say if someone's planning to kill.
Don't tell me the Torah, because then you're adhering to a belief system. I'm talking about logic. I'm saying that logically, no proposition can be maintained. Logic does not give answers to ultimately the things that we choose to believe. So I want you to identify in the subheading, what is it that you have chosen to believe? Because that is the basis, that is the substrata, that is really the beginnings of all the constructions of your behavior to determine what's right and wrong. What makes something right and wrong is what you believe as being the basis. In the case of my teaching here with you, to me the basis here is, as was said earlier, giving and sharing of yourself is right, whereas wanting and pleasing yourself is wrong. And when I say pleasing, of course you should be able to at times have pleasure, but I'm talking if in the state of the conflict you are simply doing things because of the I want syndrome, that makes it essentially wrong in the setting. Whereas if you're working towards the benefit of the other, even if you're doing it with strength, and even if you're doing it in a way which comes over to the other party as hard, doesn't matter. As long as your feeling is, I am doing this for the benefit of the other. Very basic, important principle in parenting. But very, very important principle in spousing. In spousal relationships, we often don't apply this principle, unfortunately. And it's complicated. Because we also want to be built up by our spouse. We want our spouse to respect us. We want our spouse to honour us. We want our spouse to admire us. But not to fall into the trap of it's all about me. It's nice if I get all that back. But as I say in another lecture, that's called bonus. It's not what you should expect. It's actually the payoff if you play your cards right and practice the relationship compassionately, the word that was used earlier. Next sub-point, say to yourself 100 times a day, audibly, so you can hear yourself, I am strong, I am strong, I am strong. Whether at home, supermarket, car, and especially when being challenged at that moment. Of course, I don't expect you to go through life doing these things. We're talking about a practice period, a preparation period. We're talking about changing things you may not like about yourself in the way that relational conflict seems to erupt and what direction it seems to take. I'm talking about the transitional period. All these things should be applicable. And then the new you should begin to take hold. And the new you means new state of relationship, because it takes, as I said earlier, two to tango. And you can be the change agent. It only takes one to be the change agent to change the relational context. So, I want you also, going back to another word, self-esteem, to recognize that you're a gift to your family. Even to the members of the family who don't appreciate you. Even the members of the family who take you for granted. Their thoughts about you don't define your reality. Your reality is what you define for yourself. The very fact that you are alive, seated in this room, sharing, is because Hashem thought you worthy enough to be reincarnated into life. That is the basis of your self-esteem. Your self-esteem comes because you are here, because you are gifted. Hashem would not have brought you into the world if you're not gifted. We don't need redundancy. There's no such thing as redundancy. You're here because you count. So if you're able to recognize that you are a gift, even if you haven't discovered what that gift is exactly, and how to make that contribution, but at least recognize you being alive are that gift, then you will respond to your family members differently, to your spouse differently, to the world differently. Any questions or thoughts?
A great lecture. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's very kind of you. I still want to hear if there's any questions. I still have 2-3 minutes.
So
yes.
their thoughts about you, not what? Not reality? About your self-esteem? I just missed the end.
I can't repeat anything I say. I don't remember anything, right? You'll have to watch it again, okay?
Thank you.
What if the other person refuses to?
What if the other person refuses to cooperate?
Not cooperate, will not speak to you, and therefore you don't have a chance to...
The aim of the game is not to win. The aim of the game is not to change somebody. The aim of the game is to facilitate that person's growth and development.
But they don't even know you're going through this.
Doesn't have to. Why do they have to know? You have to be the change agent. You don't have to want the change. That's again the I want. You have to be the change agent. A relationship, whether it be one of marriage or parents or otherwise, a parent-child relationship, is one where you become the facilitator for the growth of the other. You may not be able to see the results in the space of 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years. So what? And you may not even see the results. It's hard, and it's not very fulfilling, but you're doing what is right. And you're providing the opportunity. Give the other one the opportunity to choose. They may choose wrongly. That's their test in life. That's their journey in life. It's their path in life. The very fact that Hashem gave you that child as yours, that spouse as yours, means that you're most likely the most effective facilitator for that person's growth. But you have to create change in yourself to begin to effect change in the other.
You just said that you have to create change in yourself in order to affect change in others. I was wondering, this is, you didn't really speak about people having arguments, or not even necessarily involving you, but since you are, it's a family, you're involved. So what would you advise?
In other words, you're suggesting a situation where there's argument. It's not concerning you specifically.
But it is concerning you because it's your family. So.
But there are arguments, and you find what? Arguments are what? Uncomfortable for you. You want to see peace in the family.
Aggression.
It creates. So what? Amongst the kids, or in other words, what is your concern for the other one? It's not about yourself, because we've wiped that out. You're not concerned. What is
it is for yourself, because you want to be in an environment where everyone is getting on with each other. And
so there you are. We're back to the, I'm sorry, back to the I want.
But that's okay.
No, it's not okay. It's not okay. I know everyone says it's okay. It's not okay. There's a subtle difference between I want peace in my family because I want to have nachas, I want to have peace, I want to have joy, leave me alone, let me have the life I want. That's about me. I'm exaggerating. As opposed to, I really want this person to be able to develop their characteristics so they're able to tolerate each other. What strategy am I going to adopt to make that person become that? That's not to do with my contentment. It's subtly different, but it's real, and it goes to the core of where I think a lot of mistakes are taking place in the world of democracy, where I have equal rights. It's not about democracy, it's about chesed.
My concern is that, like, when the other person, who sometimes gets under my skin, but not anymore because I've developed a tough skin, but it's for the people around who find tension stressful.
Yes.
And so, like, this person will go into a blind rage, I will accept.
Well, I mean, there are many, many circumstances I'm obviously not able to touch in one hour. How do you handle a person who is in a blind rage? I admit, I'm not tackling specific issues sufficiently. But yeah, this has to be looked at in your specific circumstance. Yeah. Absolutely. Next week, same time, same station.
Thank you very much.